There's always one, the loudest presence in the room, masking insecurity with noise. They laugh too loudly at their own jokes, name drop like it's a resume, and scan every glance for signs of admiration or envy. They think attention is authority, that dominance is earned by volume, and that silence signals submission. But beneath all that theatrical confidence is something brittle. Not strength, fragility dressed up as charisma. This video isn't just vague talk or philosophical fluff. You're about to get specific, actionable tactics that Machiavelli used to survive and manipulate within the ruthless politics of Renaissance Italy. These strategies remain painfully relevant today, because human nature hasn't changed. Watch until the end so you don't miss a single technique. Combine them, adapt them, and choose the ones that fit your situation best. If this topic resonates with you, hit subscribe. New videos drop daily, each one cutting deeper into the psychology of power, strategy, and social control, because 20 minutes of real insight can save you years of being manipulated. Your like and comment help me read the feedback and sharpen the quality of every video going forward. So, the first rule of Machiavellian ego destruction is simple: don't attack the ego, inflate it. Confronting someone with an oversized sense of self head-on only strengthens their defenses. They become rigid, combative, and twice as loud. But when you feed their ego, when you nod, agree, admire, they relax. They think you've submitted. They mistake your silence for awe. That's when their posture softens, and their mask begins to slip. Let them believe they're the smartest in the room. Let them talk. Let them brag. Because while they perform, you're gathering intel. You're watching closely, learning what they need, what they fear, where the cracks are. And the moment they start feeling admired, they stop playing strategically. They drop the act of control and start indulging in it. That's your first win, disarming them with flattery they never realized was bait. The second move is to introduce subtle, undermining questions. Not attacks, just gentle prods that look like curiosity. That's an interesting idea. Where did you first come across it? Or do you think that approach still works today? Or wow, that's bold. Most people wouldn't say that. I respect it. You're not disagreeing. You're not challenging directly. You're planting seeds of uncertainty. And if you do it in front of others, it multiplies the effect. The person shifts from feeling admired to feeling examined. They start justifying, explaining, over-clarifying, signs that the ego is starting to fracture. Because someone who's truly confident doesn't explain. Only someone insecure feels the need to prove. The third tactic is to mirror their ego back to them, but just slightly exaggerated. If they pride themselves on being smart, tell them they're the sharpest mind you've encountered, probably too brilliant for anyone in this city to understand. If they love their looks, say something like, "You honestly look like someone who could walk onto a movie set and replace the lead." You're not flattering. You're mocking, wrapped in admiration. The exaggeration sounds like praise, but it gently pulls the thread of vanity until it starts to unravel. People around them begin to notice the absurdity. And the person starts to wonder, is this real? Or am I being played? That flicker of self-doubt is your second cut. You haven't humiliated them, you've just destabilized their perception of how others see them. And once they start questioning that, the foundation begins to shift. Then comes one of the most effective tactics of all, withholding validation. When they say something designed to impress, something they expect applause for, go silent. Don't react. Don't reward. Just blink, nod faintly, and move on. Or better yet, respond with detached neutrality. Interesting. Nothing more. To someone addicted to attention, that silence is unbearable. It's like cutting off their supply mid-withdrawal. They expected admiration, applause, reinforcement. Instead, they get nothing. And that nothing is deafening. It makes them question their brilliance, their worth, their effect on the room. And once that questioning begins, the collapse is only a matter of time. Fifth, outshine them, without ever looking like you're trying. Machiavelli understood that direct competition only inflames ego and invites resistance. When you challenge someone openly, they brace themselves. But when you outperform them quietly, without effort or intention, it destabilizes them. If they boast about wealth, you casually mention a deal that involved 10 times as much. If they take pride in a skill, you reference an achievement that makes theirs feel like a warm-up, but with calm detachment, never arrogance. You're not trying to win. You're simply existing on a level where their accomplishments feel like background noise. And that's what hits the hardest, not that you beat them, but that you didn't even notice it was a competition. Sixth, bring their insecurities into the spotlight, but do it gently, almost innocently. People with fragile egos often mask deep, unspoken fears. If you can identify that soft spot, you can dismantle their self-image without ever sounding cruel. If they constantly talk about money, ask, do you ever think about what you'd do if all this disappeared? If they obsess over being admired, ask, do you ever wonder if people just say those things to avoid conflict? You're not attacking, you're simply asking. But these questions are psychological needles. They don't injure from the outside, they create instability from within. They suggest, subtly, that everything they've built may be for show, and that you, somehow, see beneath it. Finally, let them self-destruct. The more inflated the ego, the more likely it is to collapse under its own weight. People like this always overreach, they talk too much, exaggerate too far, pick the wrong moment to show off. And if you've played your role well, fed their pride, stayed silent, and positioned yourself with precision, all you need to do is wait. Eventually, they'll say the wrong thing, offend the wrong person, or cross a line. And when it happens, don't gloat. Don't correct. Don't react. Just remain still. Because in a room full of people, it's not the person who lashes out that earns respect, it's the one who stays composed while everything around them falls apart. You don't break someone's ego by force. You let them trip over the performance they built for themselves. And when it's done, they won't hate you. They'll fear you. Because you never raised your voice, never played their game, and still, they shattered. And once that doubt has taken root, once their voice stumbles mid-sentence, once their eyes start searching yours for reassurance, you've entered the kill zone. This is where most people push harder, get greedy, make it personal. But Machiavelli would do the opposite. He would become colder, quieter, more precise. Because when the ego is already collapsing, the most brutal move is no move at all. Let it fall. Let them feel it. And let the silence finish what strategy started. The next tactic is pure psychological warfare. Praise them for the traits they secretly despise in themselves. This isn't flattery, it's sabotage disguised as kindness. If someone is insecure about their intelligence, say, "What I like about you is that you don't overthink things, you keep it simple." If they fear being perceived as weak, say, "You have such a gentle, kind presence, it's rare in men like you." And if they overcompensate with aggression, tell them, "You have a calm, grounded energy. It's almost meditative." You're not insulting them. You're complimenting the exact quality they're desperate to hide. And the beauty of this tactic is that they can't reject it without revealing their insecurity. So they smile. They nod. But inside, something twists, because in that moment, You define them, and they no longer control how others see them. And if you say it in public, it cuts even deeper. When someone's internal identity is contradicted by a social label they didn't choose, they don't just feel misunderstood, they lose ownership of their persona. You're not bruising the ego anymore. You're hijacking it. Once you've shaken that internal compass, trigger the next phase. Use the room against them without saying a word. When they speak, don't react directly. Just glance at someone nearby with a neutral or slightly curious expression. Not mockery, just subtle social cueing. And like clockwork, others will start to look too. Suddenly, they're no longer admired, they're being observed. Analyzed. The performance they relied on to hold power begins to falter, not because you struck, but because the room is now watching, and they no longer control the narrative. Now return to one of Machiavelli's most devastating strategies, to outclass without acknowledgement. You don't win by arguing. You win by making their games irrelevant. If they brag about powerful connections, mention names they've never met, casually, like it's nothing. If they boast about wealth, reference investments or risks they wouldn't even understand, not to flex, but to make their metrics feel small. And you never act like you're trying to impress. In fact, the moment you do, the advantage is lost. But if their performance amuses you, if you react with a kind of passive indifference, they collapse. Because nothing disarms the ego like being dismissed. You didn't challenge their worth, you treated it like a child's drawing. Well-intentioned, but unimpressive. And that's the final insult. They're not your rival. They're your student. And they're only just starting to realize it. Next comes a subtle but devastating tactic, silent comparison. In group settings, ego-driven individuals often try to seize the spotlight. Let them dominate the room, then calmly redirect the attention elsewhere. Praise someone else's insight. Invite a quieter person to speak. Ask for an opinion from someone they clearly overlooked. Not to be generous, but to starve the ego that's swelling beside you. You didn't insult them. You didn't ignore them. You simply chose someone else. And that choice hits harder than any confrontation. Because now, the egotist isn't hearing applause, they're hearing absence. And their mind starts spinning. Why them? Why not me? Then comes what looks like a harmless question, but cuts far deeper, the accidental undermining inquiry. For example, you seem really confident. Have you always been like that, or is it something you developed to protect yourself? It sounds sincere, even caring. But the whole room hears the subtext. You're compensating, aren't you? These are Machiavelli's scalpels, questions that don't draw blood at first, but make the victim bleed internally. And the genius lies in tone. If you ask with calm, honest curiosity, it becomes impossible to answer cleanly. A confident reply sounds fake. A defensive one sounds guilty. Either way, they've already lost footing. Now introduce the final twist in this sequence: neutral face, nuclear words. Timing is everything. Let them mock, provoke, or posture. Let the room grow quiet. Let their performance peak. And then, with no change in tone, no anger, no edge, drop one sentence like a scalpel. You seem like someone afraid of becoming irrelevant. It's not that I think you're a bad person, I just think your need to be admired makes it hard to trust you. These aren't insults. They're diagnoses. Delivered without emotion, they don't strike like punches. They cut with clinical precision. You're not fighting. You're observing. And the room sees it too. Suddenly, the person who commanded attention is no longer untouchable, they're exposed. The ego everyone feared is now the subject of analysis, and you didn't even raise your voice. Let's go deeper. Sometimes the most effective way to destroy someone's ego is to let them keep talking. Machiavelli understood that people reveal their weaknesses not when they're challenged, but when they're comfortable. So let them feel safe. Don't interrupt. Don't disagree. Just nod, smile, ask follow-up questions. Invite more stories, more bragging, more inflated self-image, because eventually, they'll trip. They'll contradict themselves, overreach, or say something revealing they never meant to share. And when it happens, you don't need to point it out. Just raise an eyebrow, subtle, but deliberate, enough to shift the energy in the room. You didn't humiliate them. They did it to themselves. And everyone saw it. Because you allowed it. Then comes the psychological death blow, sudden social withdrawal. Once their ego is shaken, once they've started craving your approval, once the illusion of dominance begins to slip, disappear. No warning. No explanation. Just silence. Stop responding. Don't chase. Don't acknowledge their attempts to reconnect. Because what they feared most wasn't confrontation, it was indifference. This is where the ego collapses completely. Because it was never built on inner confidence, it fed on validation. And when yours is gone, so is their illusion of control. And if you were the last person they couldn't impress, your silence becomes unbearable. They start obsessing over every word, every moment, every shift in your tone. Not because you wounded them, but because you saw through them and walked away. And if they eventually reach out, looking for answers, for relief, you deny them closure. You don't lash out. You don't explain. You say things like, "I just moved on," or "I'm focused on different things now," or simply, "This isn't about you." You say it with composure. No spite. No drama. Just truth. And in that moment, they understand it was never a fight. Because they were never your opponent. They were just another hollow persona you passed by on your way to something real. And this is the essence of the Machiavellian mind game. You don't break the ego by force, you let it collapse under its own weight while you remain silent, untouched, and composed. When their confidence is hanging by a thread, when your orchestrated silence becomes a prison they can't escape, when they start reaching for the validation they once assumed was theirs by default, that's when Machiavelli's most brutal move unfolds: absolute psychological ownership. At this stage, you're no longer dismantling their ego. You're rebuilding the very structure they believed they stood on, but now you're the one controlling it. It begins with selective acknowledgement, a tactic so subtle they won't even notice it's happening. You choose what to recognize and what to ignore. When they say something meant to impress, you stay silent. But later, when they mention something minor, mundane, or even slightly awkward, that's when you nod and say, "Now that's interesting," or "That actually says a lot about you." You've just told them, without telling them, that what they value about themselves is meaningless, and what they overlooked is now in focus. You haven't attacked their identity, you've rewired it. And suddenly, they can't trust their own instincts. They begin to question not just how others see them, but who they actually are. Then comes the strategic display of indifference. If you want to collapse someone's ego entirely, don't react, withdraw. Let them see, through your demeanor alone, that their presence has no effect on you. You don't flinch when they speak. You don't change tone or posture. You observe them the way you'd observe the weather, present, but irrelevant. And here's where it cuts deeper: when others are around, you remain polite, respectful, even warm, just not toward them. And they notice. Everyone notices. Especially the one with the bloated ego, because they're hyper-attuned to social dynamics. And when your body language says they no longer matter, that they've been socially neutralized, it leaves a wound no direct insult ever could. From here, you move into symbolic reversal, one of Machiavelli's most refined techniques. You begin to embody the very traits they once used to dominate, but you wear them better. If they were loud and attention-seeking, you become calm, grounded, and still manage to attract the room. If they used humor to manipulate, you disarm with silence. If they claimed leadership, you speak less, but with more weight. You become the improved version of what they believe themselves to be. And worst of all, you don't even try. You don't fight for attention. You don't compete. You carry it like it always belonged to you. That's what breaks them. Because now, they don't just feel outshined. They feel replaced. And that collapse isn't loud, it's internal, silent, complete. Before we come to the final blow, if this video struck a nerve, hit like, drop a comment with the tactic you've already used, and subscribe for more content like this. Only what wins. Nothing else. And now, the final blow. You don't explain what you did. You don't celebrate the outcome. You don't claim credit. You let the world do it for you. Let them whisper, he seems quieter lately, or she doesn't look so sure of herself anymore, or strange how he stopped bragging after that one conversation. And when they bring it to your attention, you shrug. You deflect. You act like you barely noticed. Because the moment you claim the win, you descend into their arena, where ego fights for validation. But when you act like you never cared to begin with, that's when they understand, you were never playing the game. You were defining it. True power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It bends perception without lifting a finger. And that's where Machiavelli's brilliance lives, not in destruction, but in quiet redefinition. He didn't crush his opponents. He made them dismantle themselves. He didn't assassinate kings, he made kings see they were pawns. And worse, he made them believe it was their own idea. So if your goal is to break someone's ego, don't argue. Don't confront. Don't even raise your voice. Just let them rise. Let them speak. Let them flaunt, mock, perform. And then, right when they think they've secured the spotlight, take one step back and let the structure collapse under the weight of their own illusion. You didn't fight them. You didn't stop them. You simply removed the stage. And as they stand there, exposed, confused, unraveling, they'll understand the final lesson. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who made silence feel like a verdict.